everyone. I'm Lindsey Grossman. I lead the product teams for Wise at North America, and I'm joined by my colleague Ryan, who leads business development for the Americas at Wise as well. Cool. So for those of you who don't know, Wise was really born on a mission. We believe that money should be without borders. We believe that money should flow around the world instantly, conveniently, and at a low cost. We've been around for 10 years, and in that time, we've been able to help both consumers and small businesses, and increasingly partners, which is the focus of today, to help those people manage their money across borders. First, I want to zoom out and look at the market today. We really believe that global is no longer a choice. Many companies historically could operate, let's say, within the US and have a thriving business and, could always put off international expansion to a later part of their journey. But when we look at what customers are expecting, from the US alone, there's nearly $70 billion flowing out of the United States in global funds flows or remittances. And that's, not even to mention what's happening around the world beyond just the US borders. And so, while companies
Can I ask something? I think one of the things that impressed upon me with Wise was how early international was part of the plan. You see a lot of other firms, your competitors, that focus very much on a domestic market before they start moving. Was that always like part of the strategy, was to be international from the beginning?
Yeah, it was. And that's primarily because the customer problem that our founders set out to solve from day one was really that they themselves were not able to move, in this case, British pounds across to the Eurozone. And they were trying to manage their own. One had a mortgage to pay, one was getting paid in one currency and living in another country. And so they said, wait a second, the systems are not made to help consumers move their money around the world. Banks were charging an arm and a leg. And more importantly, not only was it expensive, there were hidden fees behind that. So, or even traditional companies like Western Union and others would say, hey, fee-free money transfer. But what they wouldn't tell you is that the FX rate was actually, there was a hidden markup embedded in that. And so a lot of customers would move money and then get surprised to say, wait a second, the same dollars I sent one way didn't end up on the other side because there was hidden fees taken from me. And so really we set out to be global from day one. But I think the interesting point here is that we're seeing a lot of even domestic neobanks and domestic companies who are saying, we set out to manage money, let's say just in the United States, but now we're finding our customers are asking us to help them move their money in other places. And that's why they're coming to us to work together. And I think in terms of the fund flows that we're seeing, customers are still overwhelmed by the choice. Historically, they could go to their traditional banks. It would cost a ton of money to send a wire. Sometimes those banks will even tell you, hey, I want you to come in physically to a branch. Not only was that pre-COVID an annoyance, then in a COVID world, people are not going to leave their home and try to move their money by going into a bank branch. And so in addition to that, like I said before, the fees are really prohibitory. If you think about small businesses who increasingly are having their employees in other markets, thanks to things like the gig economy and platforms that help you find contractors around the world, it's still really hard to pay your employees and to know where can I go? There's so much choice, but I don't know where to begin. And if you just look at this slide, I think the slide says it perfectly. Many of you in the audience are working for these companies. There's this fintech world is super crowded, but imagine if it's complex for people like us who work in it. Imagine if your customer is just saying, I need to move my money from point A to B. I need to optimize my financial life. It's not very clear where you can turn to. Yet the expectations are pretty clear and easy. And I think about this from a product perspective. Customers need their money to be seamless. They need it to be connected. I personally think gone are the days of a single primary bank, at least in the United States. You're going to use something for your investments. You're going to use something for your 401k, something for your primary spend. But yeah, as a consumer or a small business, you need to have a single view. These things need to be connected because otherwise you can't plan. You don't, if you have a bunch of money sitting in all these different neobanks, how can you think about optimizing your future? Additionally, customers expect this to be transparent. I have the information at the time that I need it. And more importantly, I trust that information. One of the things that Wise did that a lot of people find surprising and ask me and Ryan about is, wait a second, on your homepage, you're advertising other companies' money transfer services. Why? And we took a bet from day one that even if we were not always the cheapest, we would tell our customers who was, in the hope that that would build trust and that one day they'd come back to us as we continue to drive our prices down. We have this thing called Mission Zero, where every time we lower our costs by managing fraud better or managing our bank partner relationships better, we pass on those savings directly to customers. And so it was a bet that transparency was something that would be aligned with our brand, and customers would come back, and they have. And lastly, the customer expectation is that money should be instant. And so we're continuing to try to improve that. Go ahead.
I want to ask you a question on something you said, Lindsey. It was you said it almost in passing. I think it was a very important point. And you said you imagine the future of financial services that most customers don't use a single bank. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, our last conference was called Convergence, which was about, every neobank and every, traditional institution layering in new services so that they can be that one bank. Can you just talk about sort of that dynamic and why you believe what you do?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is an opinion, certainly, and there'll be lots of people on the other side of this argument, but I think that there's something to be said about specialization, especially when it comes to cross-border. It's taken us, 10, 11 years to get really good at managing billions of dollars around the world. And that expertise in cross-border, I don't think is something that a domestic neobank can do at the same time that they're doing lending, at the same time that they're doing investments and a bunch of other things. And so I think there's something to be said about differentiation and partnering with companies to leverage their competitive advantage to create a single experience and to hope that, you can get more, you can serve more of the problems for customers. But I don't know that there'll be a single winner takes all in this environment. I think Ryan will talk about this in a moment because he's partnering with all of these companies, but that's my view on it, at least.
I appreciate that. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
One data point we can share what we're seeing. COVID made a big shift in the market in the small business space, where traditionally small businesses stayed with their primary bank for all the services. They didn't leave the bank. Unlike remittances that have really used non-banks, Wise, MoneyGram, Western Union, many other providers, they dominantly used them for international transfers. COVID sparked a shift, and we saw significant movement of the small businesses out of banks to non-banks for international transfers. We added over 10,000 new small business customers every month of 2020.
Wow.
Where small businesses are now acting like remittances. Like they're more cost conscious. They want something digital, and they want the transparency, the guaranteed fee, guaranteed delivery amount. So we're at this point in the market where we're seeing it's very much in flux. Like people are leaving the bank, they're moving around. It's now at a point, which we'll talk about in a moment, how, from a bank perspective, what's the strategy you need to do to better defend or recapture those customers? And that's where the embedded finance strategy really comes in.
Got it. Before you move on, Joshua Norris asked, will the slides be shared? He really wanted a screenshot of the fintech ecosystem slide.
Sure. Yeah. And we put the source there. That's actually one that we found from an external provider. But yeah, we'll definitely share it.
Great. Thanks.
Great. In terms of who we serve and a little bit of context, so we started off with our Wise transfer product, again, helping customers get money from point A to point B to their friends and family, helping small businesses pay their vendors overseas. And what we found a couple of years ago is that customers were telling us, hey, wait a second. TransferWise, who we used to be called before we rebranded, was I don't just want to transfer my money. I also want to be able to hold it because I don't, my financial life or my business is not just in one single currency. I have recurring needs for multiple currencies. I live across borders. And so we launched what's called the Wise multi-currency account, and that allows people to hold money in over 50 currencies, 10 of which we issue local bank details. So a great example is you can be a business, let's say in France or in Singapore, and a lot of your customers are in the United States. A lot of those customers don't want to try to figure out how to send money to your Singapore bank or to your bank in France. So we provide you as a customer an account number, a number that you can use for ACH, a number you can use for wire, and you can get paid like a local for your customers, from your customers in the United States. Additionally, that comes with a debit card And it actually has a really cool dynamic spend capability. So it allows you, let's say tomorrow, if I show up in France and I want to buy a croissant, let's say I don't have enough euros in my balance, it will pull from whatever balance I have enough money in that is the cheapest conversion for me at that moment, at that point of the point of sale. And so that really helps customers, have global mobility, but also save a lot of money. And then lastly, the thing that I'm really probably the most excited about is the transformation of Wise going from historically a direct to consumer and direct to small business company to now exposing our core capabilities via API, so that traditional bank partners, which Ryan will talk about in a moment, and let's say digital players, whether that be Xero, which is an accounting platform for small businesses, or whether that be Google Pay, which we're powering their cross-border peer-to-peer capabilities. Companies are now saying to us, hey, Wise, going global is indeed really hard. You've been able to figure that out. Can we use some of your core capabilities, embed that in our own experience, still controlling the UI, still controlling that seamless experience, so that we can make sure customers don't leave our own platform, and we can solve that international need as it's really becoming important in the world. In terms of where we are, we have over 11 million users today. Each month we process $7.5 billion. We're operating in 80 countries, and 40% of our transfers take, we call them instant, so less than 20 seconds end to end. So you'll see a lot of customers when they say, why am I using Wise? They say, wow, it moved faster than I could even imagine. And so it allows me to pay my mortgage overseas, allows me to pay for my family's medical expenses in another country. And it is really inspiring. It's these use cases are like what's helping, me get out of bed every day to go build more of these solutions. Turn it over to Ryan. Yeah.
Just an aside, Tearsheet's a small but growing international company, and we use Wise for our payroll and for the equivalent of a banking account internationally. So
awesome, thank you. I'm gonna come ask you what features you want us to build next. So, cool. I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk about what he's seeing in the external industry.
Yes, from Wise, we mentioned earlier this shift. There's a shift in the market, particularly in the small business space, even the retail space. So the market shifted. We're also seeing how banks need to respond to that has shifted. We're at a point where international payments have generally been underinvested or ignored for quite a while, particularly on the user experience front. And we're at a point now where we're seeing attrition from traditional banks, and they're thinking, how do we improve that? How do we defend these customers from growing fintech threats? How do we retain a customer for growth? And we're going to show a couple of examples of what we've done today to give a sense of where we're at in the market. So with Wise, we've mentioned a couple of our key features today. Speed, 40% instant is a standout. The transparency to guarantee the total fee and the delivery amount in the foreign currency before the user initiates the transfer. And importantly, availability. It's 24/7, 365. We deliver on weekends. So there's no longer the 4 p.m. cutoff time that you typically see at a traditional bank. So we've extended out our API that powers our product to other banks, fintechs, corporates. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to show some early results of what we're seeing from some of our partners. One of our first partners in the US was Central Federal Credit Union. The credit union in Silicon Valley, mostly focused on tech workers, like sending money home. They've been live with Wise for over a year, and they've seen a strong growth in user activity. So today, they see a 15-to-1 ratio of Wise transfers to traditional wires. So it's unlocked a new type of payment, and it allowed them to service a new type of payment demand that they weren't previously seeing on wires. Similar to what we're seeing in domestic, there's multiple domestic rails happening. We have ACH, we have Zelle, there's P2P platforms, all servicing different niches. The same is happening in international with Wise, wires, other rails. We've launched with Google Pay. We're directly integrated there, allowing Google Pay users to send international from their direct wallet. The Wise integration is the most popular feature for new GPay users. So it's driving incremental growth to those platforms. And then our most recent two were Payfare and In the Orchard. Payfare is the platform for gig economy payroll. So they power the payroll for Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash drivers, allowing them to receive instant payroll. Today, those drivers have to wire or ACH funds out of that wallet to a provider to send money. So there's multiple steps to send an international transfer. We're adding the convenience of bringing Wise to where those drivers are. So we're adding Wise right into the Payfare app. They can receive their payroll and send an international transfer globally from right in their one solution. So no longer managing multiple accounts, no longer having to shift money around. So it's like convenience becomes key. Very similar with The Orchard. The Orchard is Sony Music's global music distribution platform. So they have artists globally trying to receive royalty payments. And here we're creating a single integration to seamlessly pay out globally. When we look at what Wise has done, I think of Wise as like an Apple Pay moment in international, where Apple Pay wove together card rails, issuing banks, new technology around tokenization, like lots of things into a seamless user experience at point of sale. Wise has taken a similar strategy on international. We've woven together the payment rails across 88 countries. We have fraud technology built in. We have payout and screening technology built in. We've woven together lots of things into a seamless user experience. That strategy has really worked, and it's paving the way for where we're going. There's just lots happening in payments, CBDC, stablecoins, crypto. I mean, we're positioned at a place where we can weave together. Those are new threads we can weave together into our payment solution to be the leading seamless provider. And all of that product development flows through to our partners. So we're talking about embedded first as the strategy going forward to retain leadership. Embedded allows you to do product development without having to actually take that on. You can leverage the expertise and the niche skills of other partners.
Ryan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. Do your partners, is there a tension there that they might see Wise as an eventual competitor? Is there a tension there on the partnership side to working with a technology company like Wise?
That's a common question you get in any type of partnership approach. It's like, does this partner, are they going to compete with me? With Wise, it becomes a non-issue given our core focus is so narrow on international. Like that's our expertise. That's what we know. We've really stayed in that lane. Like you don't see us going out into domestic payments or like P2P on the domestic side. We don't do lending or really have a narrow view that allows us to work pretty seamlessly with lots of different types of clients.
Okay.
So that's where we're at with Wise. Zach, I'll kick it over to you if there's some questions from you or even from the audience.
Yeah, guys, now would be a good time to ask questions. We have a couple minutes left for Ryan and Lindsey. I have a question as we wait for questions. What's the go-to-market? Like how is Wise transitioning from being a B2C company to working with banks? Like internally, like how are you approaching new customers, prospects? Like, is that a new learned skill for the company? It feels to me like a very different direction.
It is. It's an evolution in Wise and an evolution to where I think the future of Wise is going as a platform company alongside our direct-to-consumer and direct-to-business offering. We're bringing in new people. Like, for instance, I joined Wise about a year ago as the first hire, boots on the ground in the US here. As far as the pipeline and go-to-market goes, to be frank and transparent, to date, we've done no marketing. It's all been inbound interest from partners that see the pain point or see their customers using Wise. So they can see where the money's going and see the user experience the customers are choosing, and they want to bring that to them directly. So bringing those customers back in, not just from Wise, but from all the other providers that they're using. MoneyGram, Western Union, it's a pretty crowded market. So we're blessed with a really strong existing product that's driving the early adoption. Zach, you mentioned you're an existing Wise user. A significant part of our pipeline for integration are existing Wise users wanting to bring that experience within their own platform. So we're blessed with that. You're going to start seeing us become more traditional B2B next year as we really push on the gas with early anchor partners now live and able to scale that quite significantly in the coming year.
Maybe I'll answer that from the product perspective. I think Ryan highlighted a lot about how we have to kind of shift how we acquire new partners. And as Ryan mentioned, like Ryan really building up the sales and partnership team. On the product side, developing for things that can immediately be in an app, like, right, with 11 million people have their phone in their hands, versus developing features that partners like Google Pay or payroll platforms can go use is quite different. Meaning one of the first things that I did when I joined a little over a year ago as well was I stood up an API team in the North America team, solely focused on bringing out our core capabilities and a clean API so that Ryan and his team could go accelerate their partnerships. The first thing I said is, hey, the deals that we've lost or why people have chosen competitors, what were some of those problems or feature capabilities that we weren't able to solve? And I said, let's go build that, because those things might have a shorter payback period versus something you do directly in your app or your website, but they will have multiplier effects for growth. I used to work at Stripe. I worked on APIs at Intuit and a number of other companies. And I've really seen the power of platforms, because that's when you really see the hockey stick growth. You build a capability, Ryan and his team go in and sell it and build those partnerships. And all of a sudden it's up and to the right. And so, but it really had to change how we thought about building products. Even, engineers having to think about, hey, you are building for other engineers at Google Pay. You're building for other engineers at payroll providers or companies like Xero. And so that meant we had to improve our documentation and really make sure that API documentation is part of the product experience. And also think about things like, how can we give product documents for Ryan and his sales team to talk through in a really simple way when he's going out to pitch new partners? It's definitely been a shift. And I think even when people who maybe are not on API-centric teams are building new features, myself and a few others on the platform team, we say, cool, when's that going to be available to partners? And we need to think about that partners from day one. But it's definitely a cultural shift from a product perspective, and it doesn't happen overnight. We're still on that journey.
The one thing we're not changing is the focus on transparency. So price transparency and not hiding fees in the FX rate. That's core to our mission. And you see the partners that are coming on board adopting that same philosophy and how they treat customers. So that becomes key in how we continue that mission.
Lindsey, Ryan, that's about time for us. I really appreciate you both coming in and talking about Wise and Wise for Banks. Appreciate that.
Good to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.